Well, y'all sounded beautiful there. I was careful not to sing just in case my mic was on. But so today, joy. Today is our third Sunday in the season of Advent. And so I thought, as a trained theologian and unity minister, that it was my job, my duty, to explain a little bit about what that means. So I'm going to tell you that what that means is that Christmas is almost here, right? Christmas is almost here, just around the corner. And so to that end, I have put my Christmas list in the bulletin for each of you. But just in case Duke pulled it, I actually also added to our website, unitytemple.com. So please visit our website. So seriously, today I get the honor of speaking about joy. Joy. But I want to remind you of the journey that we've taken during this Advent season, which is that 2 weeks ago, Duke opened up our Advent season by sharing with us a very important message about hope. Hope in this modern day. Hope when the news seems to be increasingly about darkness and lack of hope. And he shared with us a good reminder that even as there might seem to be a lot of bad news happening in the world, that there is also an extraordinary amount of good happenings in the world that don't necessarily make the news, right? So many good happenings in the world that don't necessarily make the news. But then ultimately, what Duke shared with us, I think in the most profoundest way, is this point he made as he echoed a sentiment that is often shared by the famous theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking, when this man, who has endured so much, tells us repeatedly that while there is life, there is hope. While there is life, there is hope, Duke shares with us. And then, last week, in the second Sunday of Advent, Reverend Sandra shared with us so poignantly and personally about our struggle for both inner peace and outer peace in this world. And she reminded us that every single Sunday when we gather here and we do that peace prayer together, we are supporting greater peace in this world. And when we gather here every Sunday and we also sing the peace song at the end of every Sunday, we support peace in the world, but not if we just come and do it by rote and by habit. But when we come and join together and speak peace and pray peace and sing peace and live peace like we mean it, right? So hope, peace, and now again today, I get to share with you about the message of joy. And today, my message is going to come in two primary points, if you will. And the first point is this. Number one, joy is awesome. Joy is awesome. Really theological point there. Joy is awesome, and it is innate and within us. So that's all part of point one. And then point two kind of naturally follows from that, which is essentially this. Now, if joy is awesome and we're it's our nature, why aren't we experiencing it and expressing it more fully and vibrantly and consistently in our lives? The second point I want to make today speaks to my belief and a unity perspective that the reason that we don't is our conditioning. And so for my second point, I'm going to outline some of the ways in which perhaps some of us, I know for me, have been conditioned out of our spontaneous and natural expression of the vitality and vigor of our joy. So first, joy is awesome. Joy is awesome, and it is innate as the very essence and fiber of our being. That's what unity teaches. We teach that joy does not depend on outer things. It doesn't depend on certain people or certain relationships happening. Joy, when we feel it, is so amazing, right? Those moments when we can glimpse joy. I know that when I feel joy, it doesn't matter what other drivers are doing. I'm just singing my Christmas carols, driving away in the slow lane when I'm feeling filled with joy, right? When I'm filled with joy, I notice my immune system's better. I get sick less often. I recover more quickly. When I'm filled with joy, I'm also emotionally more resilient. You know, criticisms, things people say can just go float by me. I'm happy when I'm filled with joy. I'm emotionally resilient. And this also means that when I'm joyful, I'm actually also more productive in the world, right? I'm more enthusiastic, passionate, engaged. When I'm filled with joy, I can work tirelessly for that which I am passionate about. Joy is an amazing gift that each of us has been born with. Now, though each of us has been born with this gift, for the most part, many of us, as we move into adulthood especially, lose sight of it through different stories that we've been told about the appropriateness of our expressions of joy, the appropriateness of whether we are even entitled to joy. And as I move into the second point, especially for those of you who are new to unity, I want to make a very important foundational point about what we believe here in unity. Here in unity, we are so into this idea of spiritual transformation and growth. And that's what we invite every person here, not just the ministers, but every person here to engage in. But the difference between us and perhaps some other traditions is that we don't come from the perspective that there's something innately wrong with you. Instead, we come from the perspective that embedded in the very fiber of your being are peace, love, joy, wisdom, hope. That's the stuff that we each are made of. That's the stuff we're made of. And so the spiritual path is like the reverse. It's the letting go of that which shadows that truth. It's the releasing of all that which is not essentially you. And so to that end, unity teaches that prayer is an essential piece to this path of transformation, of uncovering our innate love, peace, and joy. And so I've been reading a book recently by Catherine Ponder, one of my favorite all-time unity ministers. She wrote a book called The Dynamic Laws of Prayer. And in this book, she has a specific prayer called the prayer of concentration. And she says, there is such an important part to this prayer of concentration. A lot of times people are so focused on what they're concentrating on, the things that they want, that they've skipped over this first initial step, which is to release that which is not true, that which is not useful, that which is not needed in consciousness. And so, reflecting on this, I thought, you know, this year I'm going to have a different kind of Christmas list. Catherine Ponder advises that not only do we release these things, but we write a list about the things that we want to release. So I made up a very special Christmas list. A little one. And I'm going to share it here with you today. Wow. Dear Santa, I've been really good this year, with a few understandable exceptions. I want you to know that I actually don't need anything for Christmas, because I've come to know that I truly have everything I need already within me. I only ask that this Christmas you help me to more deeply remember that joy is my natural state of being, and help me to unload the many false beliefs that I've been carrying that have told me otherwise. Also, by the way, I know you might think this is a weird letter, but my Unity minister told me to do this, so please bear with me. I only have 6 things on this list. Number 1, dear Santa, I now release the false and limiting belief that it is somehow more noble to suffer than to be joyful, and that to be a good person means that I should always sacrifice my own joy for the sake of others. I here now release this belief so I can make room for the spiritual knowing that joy is an abundant state of being available to everyone equally, including me, and that my own joy does not take away from anyone else's. Dear Santa, I now release the false and limiting belief that being a mature adult means stifling my innate sense of play and spontaneity and wonder. So please help me to not roll my eyes when my husband breaks out in dance and tries to get me to join him in public places like parks and malls, as he keeps to the beat of a drummer I can't hear. Help me also to remember the importance of lightness and laughter. You know, after all, the word light is in the word enlightenment. And we see in enlightened souls, people like Dalai Lama, that they carry with them a bearing of the supreme, lightheartedness, right? And so, Santa, as I hereby let go of the totally antiquated idea that seriousness is more important than lightness of being, then let me also remember the words of that very edgy and spirited 12-step guru, Anne Lamont, when she said, "Laughter is carbonated holiness." Laughter is carbonated holiness. And I know you practice this truth, Santa, because you're always saying, ho, ho, ho. Number 3, there are only 6, okay? So, number 3, dear Santa, I now release the false and limiting belief that joy is a luxury, meant only for people who were born in America and well settled in here, with time for leisure like that, but not for political refugees like me and my family, because we have to put our heads down and work and work and work in order to survive. Because on that note, Santa, I'm learning something else. I read an article recently called "The Power of Full Engagement." And in this article, they talked about how absolutely exhausted so many of us are in this modern day, that we can't even be present to fully experience our joy or engage with our fellow human beings. We can't even be present or have the energy to serve our fellow human beings because of this. And in this article, I read about how when these authors, the authors of this book that this was based on, did work with premier, successful, professional athletes, what they found in common with those who had that extra oomph, who were able to persevere and prevail when others would fall away, what they found in common with those people was actually their ability to deeply rest. Like the tennis player who could deeply rest as she was wiping her brow in between the set. And they said that that deep rest came from the ability to play, and it came from the practice of meditation, so that we find within the spaces of our lives this rest that sustains us. So, item number 4, Santa. Dear Santa, I now release the false and limiting belief that feeling joy in the midst of others' suffering, which is pretty much constant in this world, especially because of the news. Feeling joy in the midst of others' suffering, whether it's the world's, my neighbors, my families, my partners, my other loved ones, that's somehow selfish. I release the idea that feeling joy in the midst of the world's suffering somehow means that I'm cold and uncaring. On this note, I'm reminded of the fact that Mother Teresa, I actually have a friend of a friend who went out to go help Mother Teresa, and when she first arrived in Calcutta, where Mother Teresa was volunteering, this woman looked at the carnage that was all around her. She said, "Oh my goodness, how can this be? How demoralizing, how upsetting." And Mother Teresa turns to her and says, "If you cannot find your joy in the midst of all of this sorrow, you should go home, because you will be of no help to me here. Help me release the belief that it is cold and uncaring to be joyful amidst the sorrow of the world." Number 5, dear Santa, I now release the false and limiting belief that true joy means never letting myself or others around me experience sadness. I'm reminded here of the words of the Sufi poet Rumi, who says this so beautifully, that sorrow, he tells us, sorrow prepares you for joy. It violently sweeps everything out of your house so that new joy can find space to enter. It shakes the yellow leaves from the bough of your heart so that fresh green leaves can grow in their place. It pulls up the rotten roots so that new roots hidden below have room to grow. Whatever sorrow shakes from your heart, far better things will take their place, he says. So please, Santa, help me to release this false and limiting belief about sorrow so that I can stop repressing my own sorrow, so that I can stop being so uncomfortable in the midst of someone else's sorrow, so that I can be a light and a presence in the face of the inevitable sorrow that I see in the world. And then finally, dear Santa, I release the false and limiting belief that I have to cling tightly to joy in order to keep it. In her book, Finding Joy, one of my favorite authors, the Quaker Charlotte Castle, wrote that when we are distant from our innate capacity for joy, we tend to be more inclined to try to capture the moment and then imprison it, right? We do this with our past joys, and we want this tradition to happen every Christmas because we were so joyful when it happened before. But this Christmas, Santa, I really need to learn and know this lesson, because this is the first Christmas that I'll be serving as a minister. And that means that this is the first Christmas where I am going to miss seeing my family in California, because I get to minister here on Christmas Eve. And so let me release the idea that my joy is attached to the way joy used to look in my life. That's all I want, Santa. So Santa, those were the 6 things on my list. When you come by in your sleigh, you'll find these old beliefs I have in the recycle bin. I'm from California, we recycle. So, recycling is important to me, so I hope you take it to the North Pole, and then you transform these beliefs into new and better beliefs. P.S., don't forget to take some cookies. They are gluten-free. That's it, my list. So, to support reconnecting with our innate sense of joy, I invite you to consider what would be on your list. Maybe some of the same beliefs. What are you willing to release this Christmas? And I want to conclude here by reminding us, I joke about Christmas and Christmas lists and all that, but reminding us constantly about what, at least from the unity perspective, is the true meaning of Christmas and even the true meaning of Advent. Because Advent comes from the Latin adventus, which means to come, right? So in unity, when we talk about the coming of Christmas, we're not talking about the literal arrival of the baby Jesus. Foundationally, what we're focused on is the birth in consciousness of what we call Christ consciousness. And by this we mean a consciousness of oneness, a consciousness of wholeness. And so these weeks of Advent are a way that we prepare ourselves in consciousness to come into that deeper knowing that divinity lives in us, as us, through us. And just as Sandra shared so eloquently about last week when it came to peace, she said, I believe we can absolutely have peace on earth. It is possible, but it is impossible if we do not each cultivate peace first in our own hearts. If we do not first practice peace in our own communities. And the same is true for joy. So if we really want to say, joy to the world, and mean it, then we need to first look at the ways in which we have contained the joy that rests in our own hearts. So it is with that sentiment that I'll invite you all now to prepare for a time of prayer and meditation, a time of going into the silence and into the joy of your own being. And so I invite you all now to take a deep breath and slowly exhale. And as you breathe, I invite you to rest deeply. Rest your hearts. Rest your mind. Rest your body. And in that rest, find that place of silence within yourself. That place that always abides. That place that cannot leave you, because it is the very essence of your being. And take another deep breath and relax even more deeply into this precious moment of your aliveness. And enter now into the space in you where you know the truth, that you are joy itself in expression. That you are a joy so profound that none of the movement of emotions and sorrows in the world can disturb that joy. Locate that joy. Be with it now as you rest here now in the silence. And as you gently bring your attention back into the space of this room, I invite you to make my words your words as you affirm silently to yourself, I am carbonated holiness. I am joy. And so it is.
We are your people of the night. We long to see your newborn light. Give us new faith. Give us joy. Be in our presence as we wait. Be in our presence as